Okay, I have two articles for you tonight, and they can both be summed up with the GOP seems to think there aren't any real problems in their cities because, or states, because what the hell is going on here? So, the first article is from LGBTQ Nation, and its headline is Montana GOP angered after city outsmarts their new statewide pride flag ban. All right. The city of Missoula followed the law so it could legally fly pride flags on government property, and the Republicans still aren't happy about it. Well, of course they're not, because colors are scary or something. Montana Governor Greg Gianforte, a Republican, of course, and state Republican legislators are angry that the city of Missoula has figured out a way to get around their ban on flying pride flags on government property by following the law and declaring the rainbow flag as their official city flag. Now, Gianforte and the band's legislative sponsor are pledging to change the law once again to stop the city from ever flying the divisive LGBTQ plus community flag. Seriously, if you think that the pride flag is divisive, you're just outing yourself as a bigot. Because who the hell thinks making sure that all people are treated non-discriminatory, if you think that that's divisive, then that's a definite you problem. On Monday, the Missoula City Council approved a resolution recognizing the pride flag as the only official city flag, according to KECI. The city's attorney, Ryan Sudbury, noted that the city had no other official flag before Monday, and that the city can still approve other flags as official banners. Other cities have taken similar moves to circumvent their own state's pride flag bans. The city's resolution came in response to House Bill 819, which Gianforte signed into law on May 13th. The law allegedly restricts any flags that represent a political party, race, sexual orientation, gender, or political ideology from being flown on government property and public schools. However, the law has exceptions for the flying of the Confederate flag, because that's not a divisive flag at all. A racist banner that shows support for owning black slaves, as well as for the official flags of any county, municipality, special district, or other political subdivision within the state. The Missoula City Council passed the resolution for the new flag in a 9-2 vote on Monday. Council member Jennifer Savage said she introduced the resolution in consideration of her queer daughter, saying, "When I see the pride flag, I breathe a little sigh of relief and think my kid is safe here." After learning of the city's new flag, Gianforte criticized the council for making the flying of a divisive flag their top priority while ignoring the city's housing affordability crisis, raising taxes by 17% because of overspending, and refusing to take firm action to end encampments in the city. First off, you're allowing the fucking Confederate flag, but the pride flag is the divisive one. Secondly, you lose your own fucking argument because you're so concerned about the pride flag that you first banned it, and now you're going to try to amend the law so nobody can fly it, which I don't know how they're going to manage that. So, by your own admission, you aren't caring about any important issues, that your top priority is just whether or not people celebrate Pride. So, why is it with Republicans that every accusation is a confession? Seriously, what is up with these people? Missoulians deserve better, and fortunately, 2 council members voted against imposing this divisive, far left agenda on their community, Jean Ford added. Again, you're allowing the Confederate flag, because how is that not divisive? The band sponsored 25-year-old state rep Braxton Mitchell, a Republican, also criticized the so-called ultra-far left city council, accusing them of politicizing public property and being completely out of touch with reality and the values of the vast majority of Montanans. Okay. So, first off, for people who think that the bigots will just die off, that they're all old white men, this is proof that that's not true. That's number one. Ultra far left? I'm sorry, you have absolutely no clue what the ultra far left is. If you think flying a pride flag makes one ultra far left, you would shit your pants if you encountered an actual candidate from a ultra far left party like they have in Europe. So, no. Politicizing public property? How is that politicizing public property? You guys are the ones who decided to make human rights political. So nobody's politicizing by saying you're welcome here. That's not politicizing. Being completely out of touch with reality. Which reality is that? That gay people are discriminated against and Missoula wants them to feel comfortable there? And the values of the vast majority of Montanans? Are you sure about that? Because unless there's an outcry in Missoula that the city council did this, I'm going to say that the majority of Missoula voted for this. And, okay, so what if the rest of Montana is deep red? And it's just Missoula that actually gives a shit about gay people. That is still one city. And they get to make decisions for their city. Not for the state of Montana. They are not the entire state of Montana. Every city has its own views. Some cities are liberal, some are not. In my state, Wisconsin, the 2 big liberal cities are Madison and Milwaukee. The rest is purple. We have deep red, which I'm unfortunately in right now. But there are plenty of rural red areas. There are purple areas. There are all sorts of areas. You can't say, that's why Wisconsin is a swing state. But even though Montana is generally a red state, that doesn't mean every person in Montana is Republican or MAGA. Because not all Republicans are MAGA. So, even if it's true that they aren't, that they're out of touch with the vast majority of Montanans, fine. Are they out of touch with the vast majority of those who live in Missoula? Because that's different. Just because you're a state rep or a state governor and you have to take into account all the people of Montana and their feelings on a subject and their thoughts on a subject, doesn't mean that people at the city council of Missoula have to care what the people of Billings think about an issue. Because they don't represent Billings, they represent Missoula. It's not that hard. Taxpayer-owned property should represent everyone, not just the loudest political movements of the moment, Mitchell added. The pride flag, like any other political symbol, has no place replacing a city's identity. Yet, the Confederate flag is considered okay. I'm sorry. How is that not political? It's anti-black. It's saying that we value slavery and we want to go back to that. And for those who are screaming, oh no, it's about Southern heritage. Yeah, your Southern heritage of owning slaves. How do I know that? Because the leaders of the Confederacy literally said that the reason they seceded from the Union was because of slavery. They wanted to be able to own slaves. That does not mean that every Southerner agreed with that. So, yeah, it's a pro-slavery flag. There's a reason why it's called a rebel flag, because that's literally a traitor flag. They tried to create their own country called the Confederacy. It's not just some quaint name for a group of states, like neighborhoods in towns get named. It was supposed to be its own country. So not only is it anti-black and pro-slavery, it's also a flag of a country that no longer exists. If they try this, we will amend the law next session to make sure no city can make a political symbol their official flag, he continued. If they want to fly that flag, they can do it at home, not on the taxpayers' pole. Both Utah and Idaho have signed similar laws restricting the flying of pride flags in schools and government property. The move led the capital city government of Salt Lake City, Utah, and Boise, Idaho, to designate the pride flags as official city flags so they can still fly them under the bans. And I would love to know, like I said, how they plan on amending the law to prevent the flying of the pride flag. Now, granted, I'm not sure I like that the cities are co-opting a flag of a movement like Pride as their own. I understand why. I understand the reasoning behind it, but it just gives a ick to me. So, yeah. Not a fan of that. But at the same time, how are you going to stop that? I'm afraid to find out what they're going to come up with to try to stop this. So that's the end of that article. So now we go to The Guardian. And more GOP lawmakers who obviously have nothing better to do than to, spout nonsense. 8 U.S. states seek to outlaw chemtrails, even though they aren't real. States introduced chemtrail-coded legislation as conspiracy theories take root in some U.S. chambers. Political leaders love an empty statement or proclamation, but when Louisiana's State House of Representatives moved against chemtrails last week, they were literally seeking to combat something that does not exist. It was an act of political symbolism that delved deep into the sort of anti-government conspiracy theories that have flourished under Donald Trump and are taking root in some U.S. legislative chambers across the U.S. Known to less conspiratorial-minded as aircraft contrails, or the white vaporous line streaming out of an airplane's engines at altitude, chemtrails are a long-standing conspiracy theory. Believers in chemtrails hold that the aircraft vapor trails that crisscross skies across the globe every day are deliberately laden with toxins that are using commercial aircraft to spray them on people below, perhaps to enslave them to big pharma or exert mind control, or to sterilize people, or even control the weather for nefarious motives. Oh my God, imagine going through life thinking that mundane mundane things are actively dangerous, but at the same time ignoring the shit that's actually dangerous. That is just wild. Despite the outlandishness of the belief and the complete absence of evidence, a 2016 study showed that the idea is held to be completely true by 10% of Americans and somewhat true by a further 20 to 30% of Americans. That is way too many people. At least 8 states, including Florida and Tennessee, of course, have now introduced chemtrail-coded legislation to prohibit geoengineering or weather modification. Louisiana's bill, which must pass through the Senate before reaching Governor Jeff Landry's desk, orders the Department of Environmental Quality to record reported chemtrail sightings and pass complaints on to the Louisiana Air National Guard. Because, again, there's literally nothing better to do. While there are no penalties for violations, the bill calls for further investigation and documentation. Opponents fear it could be used to force airlines to reroute flights, challenge location of airports, and bring legal action against carriers. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency states that the plumes of aircraft exhaust vapor are a natural result of flight and pose no risk to weather patterns, while the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, has publicly denied undertaking or planning any weather modification experiments. But the theories abound, including that last year's Hurricane Helene stalled over and devastated parts of western North Carolina as a result of government weather interference that was designed to force North Carolinians off their land and then exploited for rare earth mineral mining. Federal emergency managers set up a web page to dispel false information. It got so bad that there would be North Carolinians calling relatives in other states to help them because they don't want FEMA's help. They didn't want FEMA's help because they were afraid that FEMA was stealing their land. So they ended up in a disaster of their own making on top of the disaster of Hurricane Helene because they didn't take the help offered because they chose to believe utter bullshit. But government weather programs have existed in the past. For 2 decades, from 1962 to 1983, Project Storm Fury conducted experiments to releases a silver iodide compound into the belt of maximum winds to reduce the strongest winds, and cloud seeding occurs in western states to induce rain or snowfall. It's increasingly clear that humanity isn't merely subjected to whatever weather a cloud portends. We also create and influence it through our everyday actions, says Nevada Desert Research Institute. Scientists now regularly harness their moisture and pull it to earth, bringing water to parched communities and landscapes around the world. Nor has the government always been entirely straightforward in its use of aerial dispersal chemicals. The U.S. military dropped 19 million gallons of herbicide, including the cancer-linked Agent Orange during the Korean and Vietnam Wars, leading to potential long-term health problems related to exposure and spina bifida in children of veterans. Efforts to stop geoengineering are gaining support in the administration, where conspiracy-minded politicians now hold office or wield powerful influence. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of bullshit from the government in the past. Nobody denies that. But it's the same way with people and science. The people who do not trust science do not trust them simply because they were wrong about a thing in the past. And yes, that happened. But you can't assume that just because someone was wrong once, that they will continue to be wrong for the rest of their lives. That's not how anything works. So yes, the government covered up a bunch of horrible shit. Absolutely. But does that mean that they will forever and always do that? Well, depends on the administration. This one, I'm sure, is hiding all sorts of shit. We are going to stop this crime, the Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. posted on X in August. Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene said in a post before Hurricane Milton struck in October, yes, they could control the weather. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done. Even Donald Trump has spread the conspiracy theory that Joe Biden is dead and has been replaced by a robotic clone. So, yes, that's the brain trust that we are listening to as opposed to actual scientists. Great. A recently published book, The Ghosts of Iron Mountain, traces at least some responsibility for current conspiratorial thinking to 1960s radicals, including the 1967 anti-war satire Report from Iron Mountain by Leonard Lewin, written at the suggestion of Future Nation editor Victor Navasky, which posed as a leaked government study about the necessity of continuous war for social stability. In The Ghosts of Iron Mountain, author Phil Tinline traces how a left-wing hoax was adopted by the right, absorbing much of the former's anxieties about a military-industrial complex and elite control and repurposing it around the deep state with its attendant spin-offs in QAnon and militia thinking. This mischief-making, Tinline writes, acts as a warning about the consequences that await if you don't keep an eye on the line between your deep story and how power works, and what the facts support. Timothy Tagliani, a professor at the Berkeley School of Information who studies the circulation of folklore, says the chemtrails conspiracy theory has a potent history because, like all folktales, it begins with a kernel of history truth, programs like Agent Orange, and speaks to potent contemporary fears. There are certain things that were sprayed by airplanes that did have a massive impact on the environment and on people's health, he says, pointing out that Vietnam veterans had fallen sick and the U.S. was revealed as having exposed them to cancer-causing agents and then covering it up. Fast forward 50 years, there's a deep suspicion of the government and things that fly, he said. One problem, these chemtrails always existed. It's not like it's only recently started to happen that you see those vapors behind an airplane. That's not a new phenomenon. Fear of things in the sky was evident in the hysteria late last year in the panic over drones that appeared over New Jersey, close to a nuclear power station and a military arsenal, which prompted a federal investigation that has yet to release its findings. Tagliani called the cross-fertilization of theories, whether around chemtrails, vaccination hesitancy, or any number of other fringe beliefs that had made their way into the American mainstream via the internet and social media, the wall of crazy. Jets flying through the air and contrails of condensed water should not in any way be linked to disease, viruses, mind control. But if you look at some of the extractions we get from our mining social media, and if it wasn't real, you'd think your code wasn't working or in hysterics. But narratively, Taglioni pointed out, it's a very interesting thing to do. You can create this totalizing threat everywhere you look. What is the strategy for dealing with it? Call the FAA. No, the FAA is in on it. What can we do to protect our health? Well, the doctors and Big Pharma are in on it. So there's a siege mentality. All right, so that is the end of that article. So yeah, politicians are choosing to fight windmills rather than actually work on actual problems, because there is absolutely nothing that gives credence, that has evidence for the fact that contrails cause any problems. People have flown on planes, people have seen contrails from the ground. None of that has caused any damage. And again, this is not something new. This has been going on for years. So we would have evidence of a link. It's no different than the people who freaked out that 5G towers were going to be Armageddon or something. People who don't understand how anything works see something that they don't understand and assume it has to be harmful simply because they don't know how anything works. They don't know that contrails are just water vapor. If they understood that, maybe they wouldn't go freakazoid. 5G towers? No. Just because airlines were worried that their electronics would get messed up with when the new towers went on, doesn't mean it affects humans. It's just so bizarre how people think or really don't think. Just so weird. And politicians, GOP politicians, of course, are no different. Instead of attacking important issues, why don't we go after shit we don't understand how they exist? So anyway, that is all I have for this video. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.